Hello and welcome to Better Under Pressure. I'm Sara Milne Rowe, author of The Shed Method and founder of Coaching Impact. And in this podcast, I talk to leaders from all walks of life about being better under pressure and using pressure for better. I want to explore how we handle pressure in a world that is becoming more and more complex, the impact that pressure has on our ability to perform at our best, and what we do to be better under pressure.
The first time I improvised, I was rubbish. Mike Myers and Kit Hollaback had taught us some skills, but we were doing an open spot, 5 minutes. That was good. Come back next week, pay you and do 20 minutes. We only had 2 minutes material, so we did 3 minutes improvisation. We took some suggestions from the audience and Mike then started improvising, Mike Myers being brilliant. And I was literally, my head was swimming. I was, I didn't know where I was. I literally didn't know what to say.
Today, I'm talking to Neil Mullarkey, communication consultant and co-founder of the Comedy Store Players, the Guinness Book of Records official longest-running same core cast comedy show in the world. After leaving Cambridge University as president of the Footlights, Neil started improvising with a troupe including, among others, Mike Myers. They founded the Comedy Store Players and Neil ended up in Whose Line Is It Anyway and the Austin Powers films. Now, he travels the world teaching global organisations the skills of theatre and especially improv, focusing on creativity, collaboration and leadership. And he still improvises with the players most Sunday nights. He's written several books, of which the most recent, In the Moment, was published in 2023. In our conversation, Neil shares when he felt most out of control, why he was told that he didn't need an MBA, and what happens if you own your mistakes. Neil, how wonderful to have you on Better Under Pressure. And I'm really excited about talking to you because I've never had an impro expert on the podcast. And I feel that the idea of being in the moment with an impro specialist has a very different interpretation from most of the leaders that we're working with, where in the moment comes with it a lot of pressure. So welcome.
Thank you very much. That's the title of my book, which I've cheekily then said, yes, I do improv. Yes, with the Comedy Store Players, we make up scenes and stories in the moment. But then I kind of step back a bit as well and say, first of all, a moment could last 6 months, 2 years, as you're kind of thinking, oh, where am I now? What's the next chapter? And also, I say there are some things where you shouldn't be in the moment. You should be properly planned and structured and prepared. And the mistakes that people make sometimes is to not be prepared for the thing that needs preparation, presentations, for example. And also you're fully prepared and structured for a moment that actually needs a much more nimble, flexible improv approach, coaching, negotiation, listening to customers, clients, suppliers, where actually your script may be unhelpful if you stick to it.
Yes, it's a really interesting dance, isn't it, that, actually? So tell me, Neil, is pressure vital for you in order to perform?
I don't know if it's vital. It is. It just is there. Before you perform, and indeed I would count workshops. Running a workshop is performing in a way. There is pressure. And I often say to people who, for example, are learning how to present and be confident as leaders in front of an audience in that sort of formal environment, you'd be very strange if you didn't feel pressure. Use the stress, if you like, to get yourself focused. And every single performer I know does feel a bit stressed. I don't know anybody who just breezes on and go, that's fine. I think there'd be something wrong if they didn't feel some pressure. The pressure, when you say, is it vital? It's something to accept and understand and manage. And of course it's useful because the pressure of the first night in the theatre means you have to get it ready by that day, on time, on budget. Unlike many things in business, we in the theatre have to be there with it ready to go when the audience is coming in for the first performance. So the pressure is necessary, vital, I suppose, but it's not something you choose to do because it's just actually part of the focus that gives you the chance to perform at your best. If the pressure becomes too much, which it does for some people, actors and comedians I know vomit and stuff like that before, and don't do that anymore. Just do something else, or do something where it's recorded on the television or the radio.
So your journey with that relationship with pressure, has that been has that evolved over time? How have you managed to get to that place where pressure is an essential ingredient, and in fact it would be odd if it wasn't there? But how have you got to that place, Neil? What have you done in terms of your own practice to forge that relationship with pressure?
I suppose the first sort of pressure I felt that's akin to what I do now was the school play. Learn your lines, which I could do, but you rehearse and then you manage to be off book, and then you do a dress rehearsal and then you do the show. And the pressure was wonderful. I didn't know if I call it pressure in that respect. It's focus. That's what I said. People focus. So my relationship with pressure has continued in that respect. So I'd like to get to the Comedy Store early. If I'm running a workshop, I like to get there early, and the night before, if it's some distance, walk the space, whatever it may be, make sure my flip charts are in the right place or whatever. And one of the stories I recount about this is years ago, I thought about doing an MBA to get for my pivot from showbiz, acting, improv, comedy writing to where I am now in terms of coaching, keynotes and workshops. I thought I'll do an MBA. That's a good idea. And then so I did the GMAT. Have you heard of that? You have to get sort of 650, 800 something to get into a business school. General Management Aptitude Test. It's English and maths.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. You do it on a computer and have to write an essay. So I did well enough to sort of be interviewed and stuff. I went to an open day at Bath University Business School, and the wonderful woman said to me, "Hang on, are you Neil Mullarkey? I saw you at the Bath Festival Fringe. Why do you want to do an MBA?" Well, I thought, I don't know. I thought I wanted to, I want to do coaching and sort of teach people improv to make the world a better place, so we listen better and can collaborate more creatively. And she said, "You don't need an MBA for that." Oh, right, okay. Talk to my boss. So I talked to her boss. He said, "Oh no." He used to write books about organizations like theatre, the performance, the roles, the jester, etc. And he said, "Oh, you don't want an MBA? You'll talk like them." I said, "Okay, well, I won't do the MBA, but please give me a reading list." And this, I'll get to the point in a minute. One of the books he gave me was Edgar Schein, Schein, who was a guru of organizational development. And he talked about management and leadership as a dance rather than a sort of military metaphor. And sometimes when you're dancing with somebody, you're not even touching them, but you're both seeing and feeling a rhythm and leading and stepping back and so forth. Anyway, Edgar Schein, I've never met, but one of my other friends, Steve Chapman, who used to be in organizational development for a big pharmaceutical firm and now an artist and also workshop leader, he said he once met Edgar Schein, guru of org dev. He said, Steve, it's all about the furniture. When running a workshop, get the furniture right. So, you get to the environment and there's a great big board table in the room, or there's no flip charts, or there's no natural light. So I get there early. So my sort of pressure, if you like, is getting to an environment where I want to run a workshop and make sure it's organized. And I think there's also a bit of me that likes to do that, to be a bit of fussing about, in the same way that afterwards I like to decompress by putting the furniture back, tidying up, picking up bits of paper, putting the flip charts in the recycle and wiping the whiteboard. So what I'm trying to say is I acknowledge there's pressure in what I do, whether that's in performance or in workshop, which I embrace. Of course I like it, but I also note that I have to do something after that pressurized environment. So I tend to not want to talk to anybody for an hour. I tend to want to walk for a while. And so that was the problem with lockdown, Zoom. I do my workshops and be quite animated, and my children who are doing their school, "Shut up, Dad." I'm talking quite loudly and the neighbors looking around. And then I finish and I'm straight back into life in the family, in the house. And I don't get that depressurized zone, that sort of as you come up for air, if you've been diving, that kind of thing. So acknowledging the pressure is something that I actually, when I help people with communication and presentation, is acknowledge the pressure. It's there to help you. And actually, it's helping you focus. And Jim Lawless, who's a brilliant motivational speaker, years ago, I helped him with some communication workshops. And he talked about, those butterflies you have, nervous. Turn them into a flock of eagles, if that's a metaphor that helps you. It's kind of, actually the adrenaline, the pressure is helpful because it makes you focus. So my pressure is pretty small. Nobody's going to die. We're not going to, our share price on the FTSE is not going to go down the pan. And so the people that you work with, they've got huge pressure. I don't have to worry about somebody else's pension, supply chain, logistics, changing consumer behavior too much. I just worry about me. So I do talk to people who have to face those pressures, and I am amazed by them. On the other hand, they see what I do as enormous pressure. You go on stage.
Yeah.
You go on stage without a script, even more pressure. And actually, there's much less pressure to do improv than to do a performance. Stand-up comedy, and it's huge pressure. You're on your own. They expect you to come up with good stuff, whereas improv is you come up with anything and they love it.
Oh, gosh, there's so much in there, Neil. Let's just take a step back of that richness in there. I think that last point you're making there is, I think when we do things repeatedly and we evolve the skill, it starts to become something that we don't feel is very difficult, which someone looking outside in at what you do shows you actually that it's been quite a sophisticated evolution of some deliberate practice over the years, and your career absolutely says that. So of course it doesn't feel quite so pressurized as maybe it did when you first began. I also think there's another point here. Often when you work, you've been in business, and when you work in business, there's so many multiple pressures. Like, it's not just one performance or, a sporting analogy, one game. There are hundreds of little pressures that are coming in on people every single day. And of course, the impulsive, urgent need our body does is just, let's keep going, get through them. But what you're just reminding me and shining such a bright light on, I think, is the power and importance of what I would call the pressure practice prep. How do you get yourself ready, but also how do you power out of it? And I think when, what I see in organizations is there's just this relentless tyranny of back to back, or, more or interruptions or distractions. And it takes a very strong mind and body, I'd say, for leaders to manage that environment right now. I think having this sense of what is it that I need, even if it's like 90 seconds before I go on, or before I go, turn my video on, or before I walk into this room. That's the stuff that interests us, is, how do we help these busy people have their little pre-performance ritual and their post-performance ritual when their performances might be multiple during the day, right? And one final point that I really want to pick up on that you're mentioning there is this power of the environment. Environment dictates performance. But I so relate, Neil, to this idea of going into a room and thinking, oh my God, look at the carpet. Oh my God, no natural light. Oh, and trying to rearrange the environment to maximize the potential of the value. And that goes on. And I think sometimes that's hugely underestimated. Even when you think about the virtual room, how are you turning into that virtual room? All of those things. So I think everything that you're saying there is so relevant. It's just, how do you take the bits and the ingredients to make it relevant for you?
Well, exactly. And I imagine many people who are under pressure, perhaps in business, haven't thought about that. They just think that's part of the job. You need to find a way for the good of the organization to manage your energy. And when I first dipped my toe into teaching people improv as a skill in business, I have an acronym. Actually, it's LAGER, and the E was for energy. The energy you bring to a conversation helps, or is indicative of the energy you'll get out of it. And I thought it was a bit actory, energy, darling, on stage. It felt a bit too actory, not businessy. And so I thought, made the E to explore assumptions, explore all the assumptions you have about who you are, about what the client is, about what your colleagues are, that all the scripts you've written in your head about things which actually may not be correct. Anyway, some years later, I met Kate Tejera, who's a great coach and has written about the art of possible. And she said the best leaders she's encountered are the ones who manage their energy well.
Yeah, I agree.
And dare I say, energy and pressure, are they the same thing? Are they two sides of the same coin? But the clever leaders I've encountered do have a thing, and it may be something specific, like they actually have some sort of meditation, or they actually have a strong outside interest, teaching soccer or family or whatever, or they're very nimble at not going to all the meetings. I remember the head of quite a big construction firm said to me, I keep saying, no, don't invite me to the meeting. I don't need to be there. You can make the decision. And that seems to me the art of good management leadership is actually stepping away from where you don't need to be, such that you delegate the pressure, if you like. But also there's pressure then of finding the right people and the right structures such that when you are not there, it works. So it seems to me that not enough people do have an explicit way of coping with pressure or even foreseeing when it comes.
Yeah, anticipating it.
Yeah, anticipating. Because, of course, actually, I meet a lot of people who love the pressure. They're still happy to do WhatsApp messages at 8 o'clock on a Friday because that's their thing. When people talk about work-life balance and actually if your work is your life, that's fine as long as you notice that. And it may well be you can work 12 hours a day, but what are you doing with the other 12 hours? Sleep is hugely important, as you have made clear. And I've learned, virtually anything can be made a bit better with a good night's sleep. For me, it's great that you've got a podcast about pressure because it seems to be underestimated in terms of leadership. Leadership is about coping with uncertainty and ambiguity, and as well as having great left brain skills and strategy. And actually part of it is hugely to do with simply the way you are. And actually at the event where we met courageous leaders, John Amici talked about that's moment of encounter with somebody, a junior person, that means so much to them. You're just on your way somewhere, but that moment, and if you're under pressure and not giving, shall we say, the right face, and it may be you can still be businesslike, but if you're showing the pressure's getting to you, that's pretty potent, I would say. I obviously, from the showbiz world, we have built-in pressure valves. You have to get to the theatre early, 35 minutes early. You've got a period of rehearsal. In improv, we've done workshops. We've met people beforehand, even if only in the dressing room. We've done a quick tryout of one of the games that always goes badly. If it goes well, we worry. A bad dress rehearsal always indicates good first night, sort of thing. So we have built-in structures and understand in the theatre that your body is very much part of the performance. And too many people, I think, in business, in organizations, forget that the body is there, that it's not just a thing carrying your brain. It's actually a very important part of who you are and what you're able to achieve.
Yeah. What do you do with your body, Neil, before a performance?
I always sleep, get there early. Well, I sleep during the night. I used to kind of do a sort of actor's nap at 4 p.m. sort of thing. That's harder with family life. But I certainly... So I perform every Sunday with the Comedy Store Players, and I'll cook the roast, and then do the dishwasher and stuff, and then gradually become less and less sociable. Now, this is a show I've done. It'll be our 39th anniversary in October 2024. So I've done this a lot, but it's still, there's some pressure there, which I want my voice to be at its best. So going out for Sunday lunch and being convivial with other people isn't very convenient to me, because I don't really want to be talking to anyone too much anytime after 2 p.m. really on a Sunday. David Suchet, I'm told, used to get to the theatre at 2 p.m. when he was playing, to get in the zone. And some people even recite all their lines. That's not my world, obviously, but I do notice that I've got to keep my focus. I will have a nap, I'll have a bath and a shave, just step out from family life and be kind of antisocial. And that's a show I've done for a long time and doesn't require much any learning of text, but just kind of being in the zone, getting there early, making sure that I'm not there on time. And it is stressful because sometimes things are late, tubes are late, and we used to have a thing when one of the performers did arrive late, we get the whole audience to shout at them, "Where the F have you been?" Which kind of lightens it because the person is a bit stressed, but if we get a bit of a laugh from it. So even in my seemingly low pressure environment, for those of you who've done it for a long time, you do have to think about your body, your voice, your energy. And within a performance, there is pressure. The scene's not going that well, but we know the process will see us right. And actually it's okay if it's not that great, because there'll be another one in a minute, or one of my colleagues will help me out, or we can say, that wasn't very good, was it? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's built-in pressure valves there.
Okay. Before going any further, I want to pause and reflect on this notion of us all having our own built-in pressure valves. I love this. The idea that we can create them and that we can release them when we feel the pressure mounting. And this has got me thinking about pressure valves both internally and externally. And by that I mean things that I can do with my body that can positively impact me internally. You know, like a breathing technique or a stretching routine, having a useful self-talk, or actively taking care of my shed basics like getting enough sleep or drinking sufficient water. And then the external factors that can also become useful pressure valves, like, as Neil said, turning up early, or choosing not to socialise, testing the equipment, or rehearsing them with the team. What I'm really hearing in this, though, is the importance of establishing our own non-negotiables so that we can ease pressure and conserve our energy. It reminds me of that phrase that it's easier to stick to your principles 100% of the time than 98% of the time. It conserves our energy and it reduces decision fatigue. Like former US President Barack Obama, choosing to only wear grey or blue suits to conserve energy for all the other decisions he had to make on a daily basis. He actually wrote, "You need to routine-ize yourself." And even after 38 years of doing the same show, Neil knows that choosing to become less social after 2 on a Sunday afternoon gets him in the zone for his show in the evening. He's been routine-izing himself, conserving his energy for the performance so that he can be present to that show. For 38 years he's been doing that. The internal pressure valve check that I became increasingly aware of as he spoke was this: body, voice, energy. You could almost hear Neil ticking them off. It's important to have a pre-performance routine and to own it. This sort of thing matters, especially when your faster system is telling you, "Oh, you're too busy for that. Just turn up and get on with it." What gets you in the zone? What is a non-negotiable for you when you have to perform or be at your best? Do you know? Have you routine-ized it?
My world is the performance, and then might be a whole day. And it's interesting when you kind of say to people at the end of a day's workshop, I'm not going to be much good company. Or if I sometimes used to do after dinner, and the client would say, "Come and have dinner with us before you speak." And I say, "No, I'll be such bad company. I'll be grumpy and unpleasant. And let me have dinner in my room. Afterwards, I should be the life and soul of the party." But you just have to manage the pressure. And I've seen some brilliant motivational speakers who aren't from theatre, who they're busy chatting to people beforehand. And I go and say, "Oh, there's somebody who needs to talk to you." And then they say, "Thank goodness, getting me out of that." And I said, "You've got to manage yourself there."
Yeah.
Because they haven't thought about it as a performance in the way that perhaps I would. I've turned up not at my best, and I know it's reflected in the performance. So that's why it's so important to me that I can share that with people. And that's often when I've done a workshop, and I say half jokingly, after this, I'm just going to have a lie down, and because I'll be exhausted. And often some people say to me afterwards, "That was the biggest learning I had. You, a professional, so-called, were doing a thing, and then after you said you would just be completely out of it." It made me realize how much I was not committing to the performance, even a workshop or presentation.
Yeah, and I think this whole idea of being really what I call properly selfish around what matters to you in order to turn it up at your best. It has bad press, I think, the word selfish. I think it's absolutely essential if you're going to really prepare yourself for these moments that matter. And again, that's the other thing, isn't it? It's distinguishing what actually matters and what's actually good enough. Your performances matter. You've got a paying audience. They're coming to see you. And, there are moments, I think, in organizations and in life that matter more than others, but sometimes we just flatline across all of them.
That's right, yes. Actually, you talked about conversations, and I think it was Henry Mintzberg, a Canadian business professor who's kind of critical of the MBA culture. He said management is basically conversations interrupted. I thought that was great because you never quite get closure. It's always a bit imperfect. But once you recognize that, then I think you can probably cope there are moments when you've got to be totally on that town hall or whatever, the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I say to important people, give a good presentation, and you kind of invested, that's 18 months loyalty and energy you got from your team. Because I've seen ones that are terrible. They've just turned up, written a few notes on an envelope and shuffle about. And the symbolism of that is very poor. Right, they can't be bothered to do that. Even if they're not a great presenter, they should have made some effort. And when you talk about selfish, absolutely right. Self-leadership, we've got to find another word for this, because basically, if you're not looking after yourself, you can't look after the organization. A 2/3 engine isn't going to be right. So you've actually got to step away from certain things. That may sound selfish, but it's not at all, because you are an important part of the story. And if you're not at your best, you're suffering with the pressure, then you're not going to do your job well. And at some point, there'll be repercussions for everyone else.
Yeah. Yes. Neil, tell me what you think about, I really like your whole, when I was reading your book, there's a whole thing about the offer. And it made me think, around the relationship with pressure. What would it be like? I actually wrote down, what would it be like if we saw pressure as an offer that we could say yes and to?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm curious about the idea of a pressure that happens within a conversation when people get under. That you can feel their adrenaline flying because it's maybe a tricky conversation or a challenging conversation. It might even be within a team or just, a one-to-one interaction. But what's the skill from improvisation that you would offer as a way of dealing with that moment?
Yes, just to explain an offer. So if I'm on stage, somebody says, "Good morning, doctor." The offer is doctor. I become a doctor and I'll go, "Good morning, nurse," or I'll go, "Good morning, patient. How are you? How's your leg going on?" So that an offer is a word or a phrase or even some energy sometimes when somebody's kind of being a bit shy, and then that's enough. Oh, right, that's something they're giving me. An offer is something somebody gives you can do something with. So on the stage, it's clear. Is an improv scene. A bad improv scene is where, "Oh, hello, who are you? I don't know. What are you? What's going on?" Nothing, no offers. If I then say, "Oh, Mr. Johnson, so good to see you're walking again," or, "Hey, Phil, you got out of jail." "Sarah, I can't believe you came back from Portugal." Something where and then you've got something to play with. So an offer is something somebody gives you can do something with. And I liked what you said then. See pressure as an offer, not a block. So the offer, a block is when somebody says, "No, I'm not a doctor. No, I'm not going to Portugal. What are you talking about? I'm not Mr. Johnson," which negates our reality. So if you see pressure as an offer, which I do actually, I see the moments leading up to a show as just focusing me. It means I've got permission to be entirely selfish. I've got permission to think about nothing else. I can turn my phone off. I can shut the door. On the dressing room, if you like. And actually, often when I do a full day workshop, I go and hide at the Comedy Store. I'll actually go and lie down in the dressing room. So the offer there is the pressure, if you like, is saying to me, "This is important. So give it weight, give it priority." I'm just wondering, you talked about the difficult conversation. Of course, the difficult conversation is when somebody's saying something you're not sure how to deal with or saying something you don't agree with. But of course, if you treat what they say as an offer, i.e. what is really going on for them, it's great that they're saying what they feel rather than keeping it to fester, then that's an offer. So, if I say to a client, "How's it going?" and they go, that's not an offer. What's going wrong? How can we help? What's going right? So you want to be able to have a proper conversation where disagreement may pertain, but actually the yes and mindset we have is, "Yes, I hear what you say, and let me use that in my response." So we don't say the words yes and other than when we're doing the training drill, but accepting somebody else's point of view, accepting that actually in this moment we don't agree, is the basic rule of improv. Listen with intent. What's really going on here? And the offer could be, people aren't agreeing. The offer could be, "She doesn't see the world as I do. He doesn't like what happened. She really likes it." For me, it's the intentionality of improv is everything is an offer. Oh, there's something on the stage, somebody said or done, even the way they paused is an offer. Improv is all about that. Everything is an offer. The way she said, the way she turned, the way she didn't say. So a tricky conversation has to start with treating what the other person says as an offer or series of offers. Yeah. Otherwise, it becomes two parallel conversations. And Russell T. Davies, the brilliant screenwriter who did Sherlock and many other things, he said his breakthrough in writing dialogue was when somebody said, don't write dialogue, because actually people don't always talk. They just have monologues that are interrupted by the other person's monologue, sort of thing, which is great because we're writing our own script, whereas real dialogue is, oh, what you just said has changed the way I see the world or has given me extra information, which I hitherto didn't have. And that's why my E for is for explore assumptions, which as you listen, you realize what you thought may not be how she thought. What you presumed may not be true. Even the phrasing that somebody says is data, if you like. So treating that as an offer.
Yeah. And I think improv, I've done a few improv classes, not enough, but it's scary, but it's also such a wonderful opportunity to be alert, I think, all from top to toe. And I think what you're talking about there is when you're doing improv, it's not just about the words. There's so much around it that you're listening, you're picking up, you're hearing. And if we all went into conversations with that level of alertness and that level of attention on the other person, actually, I wonder what would happen. I think I spoke to you at Courageous Leaders, actually, around a phrase that was offered to me in improvisation, which was, Sara, make the other person more important than you in that moment. So when you're listening, you're holding them more important than you. And I found that incredibly helpful. And I also think it's possibly one of the best descriptions of what active listening actually means, because it's got a practical instruction in it. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. And when I say that to people I work with, they think, well, I said, I'm not saying you have to agree with that. I'm just saying in that moment, give your full attention and make them more important than you. Then you can come back into your own ego.
I think that's great because we actually have try and make the other person look good. And if you're both doing that, it's a wonderfully collaborative environment. And yes. I put that in my book. And Stefan Stern, who's a columnist and has written many books for the Financial Times, he said, wow, radical idea, make the other person look good. Yeah. But if we took that,
wouldn't it make a difference, the quality of conversations we'd have?
Yeah. And as you say, you don't have to agree with them. And I always say to people when I'm running a workshop, does anyone have any friends? And they laugh. Do you agree with your friends on everything? No. Do you actually get sometimes persuaded by them or you persuade them? Yeah. Okay. That openness of disagreement whilst respecting the other person's point of view, being open to change. Why couldn't we bring that to work? It doesn't mean that every day we just float around in the wind and have no values, but the idea being that every conversation could be a chance to learn is how we approach an improv scene. How is your character altered in this scene? What does she learn? The willingness to say, I will be changed by what I hear is quite humbling. On the other hand, when I look at the sense of what is a leader doing, what is strategy, what are plans, what are budgets, you kind of got to stick to your guns. And so in a way, this is the dynamic we face virtually every day. Certainly the senior leaders who go, how much do I stick to the plan and how much do I change it? So there we are. How much do we stick to strategy? How much do we, and how do we say, oh, that's an offer, let me change because of that change in circumstances, versus, no, I've got my story, I should stick to that because it's such a good idea. And we know both of those ways of being have been successful.
Yeah. What's been the worst pressure you've ever been under, Neil?
I was thinking about this, and children being born. You have no control. You have no control. You are in the lap of nature. And that was real pressure because I just could not add to it other than be there in the delivery room. And thankfully now they're fine. My teenage children are fine, but it wasn't really dangerous at the time. But there was an emergency cesarean, and for one and the other, we were almost at that point. And of course, in hindsight, they came up fine, and there's no blue lights and yada yada. But that was real pressure. That was, I don't know what to do now.
Okay.
This thing outside my control, where somebody I love is about to go through this extraordinary experience. I suppose that was big pressure for me, and all I could do was hold her hand, really.
So the pressure was not being able to solve anything in that moment.
Yeah, I guess that's probably, you're right. I'm used to, this is going to be stressful. I can prepare myself. I can rehearse. I can get there early. I can breathe. I had no agency at all. So I think that was it. I could do nothing. And the stakes were huge and immeasurably huge. And I could do nothing at all about it. Is that pressure? I don't know. I certainly deemed it such when thinking about this question.
Okay. Yeah. And it's interesting also that in those moments, sometimes I always recognize I'm under pressure when I can't make the transference of things that I know to do when I'm feeling pressure in that moment of pressure.
Yes.
Like I'm getting bossed by my whole nervous system. And I know intellectually what to do because, I've have multiple conversations a day about it. And also I've got lots of pressure practices for various different parts of my life. Why can't I, Sarah, transfer it in this moment?
Yes.
It just completely, it runs away from me. And that's when I know that I need to really seriously step away because something else is taking over.
Yeah. I love that phrase, bossed by your nervous system. We all know that.
What about professionally, Neil? Do you have any standout pressurized moments when you were bossed by your nervous system professionally?
So one very pressurized moment was the first time I improvised, and I was rubbish. Mike Myers and Kit Hollaback had taught us some skills, but we were doing an open spot, which is the old days, a room above a pub, 5 minutes. That was good. Come back next week, pay you and do 20 minutes. So this is our open spot. We only had 2 minutes material, so we did 3 minutes improvisation. And we took some suggestions from the audience. And Mike then started improvising, Mike Myers being brilliant. And I was literally, my head was swimming. I was, I don't know what to say. I had no idea what to say. And I have to remember that now and then when I'm teaching people improv, because I've been so far down the line of whatever you say is fine, as long as you say something. In fact, if you say nothing but just go, it's fine. My first time was I literally didn't know what to say. I had not faced a situation like this before. Luckily, I was with somebody who could guide me through it. So it was interesting. My head was... But swimming.
Also to do that in the moment of performance as well. Like, you can do that privately in a back room somewhere. But when you've got an audience watching you and you're going, nah, and the other person's going, how did he lift you out of it, Neil?
Well, he just carried on talking. On that occasion, my head was swimming. I literally didn't know where I was. Subsequently, obviously, I did many more workshops and learned more and got confident by repetition of trying the games, doing skills, different drills we did. And so there are times you go, ooh. And then now I own that. The audience sees me acknowledging my failure and vulnerability, and that's the best thing ever. And the audience love that, which is quite opposite to how you might expect life would be. They want you to be successful and good, which they probably do on a scripted piece. But actually, when you acknowledge that you've fallen over in this sort of complicit moment with the audience where we know we're making it up, that's a brilliant choice sometimes, rather than pretending you do know what you're doing, just enjoying the not knowing, the truth of it, the authenticity of it, which is very surprising to a lot of people. They think that would be ultimate failure. You go, and actually I say sometimes the audience loves it because you've taken a pause, you're still breathing, you've got a bit of a twinkle, and they love to be part of that real moment of theatre.
Yes, because they've all experienced it on some level and it's being acknowledged, right? By somebody who is supposed to be in control of everything. It's funny actually because Matty, our daughter, is doing open mics, Neil, at the moment. And I went to watch her last night do a new song. It's a hard gig, that, blimey, because it's with people she didn't know. I was the only person she knew. But it's a supportive sort of like community, actually, of people who are all trying new ideas. But there was a moment in the song where she was strumming away and she goes, now I've forgotten my words. Now, what is it like? Okay, right now I've forgotten my words. But she kept strumming and she just talked out her internal dialogue to the audience. And then, of course, she said, right, I've got it back now. And then she started the whole thing, that passage again. I was just so in admiration of that. And I just thought that is another example of what you've just been talking about, which is just be in the moment with the forgetting.
Yes, and I dare say the audience will remember when she forgot, but carried on anyway.
Yes.
Because she could have gone to pieces, couldn't she? But they will love her all the more because she came through and got it and was acknowledging the situation. She was acknowledging the moment. And I dare say, you know how jugglers and magicians often get it wrong the first time?
Yes.
Increase the jeopardy. It's a bit like that in the situation you describe, and with improv, it's kind of we fail, so that when the moments when we do get to a high, it's even more exciting.
Yeah.
So Matty, that's a life skill. That's tremendous. She's already there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The audience will enjoy the fact she was still breathing and smiling and playing away. It'll come to me in a minute. She was acknowledging rather than going red and going, and literally her face, the blood draining from her face. Her saying, I don't know the next line, I've forgotten. It's a brilliant choice. And I bet we have all seen performances where people do that as, a fake corpse, we call it.
Yes.
Oh, things have gone wrong. And it's funny, the audience likes that. And I'm not a fan of deliberately doing that too much.
No, me neither. And also you can sort of start to recognize it, I think, as an audience member, that it's just too rehearsed, that spontaneous mess up.
Yes. Whereas the audience will have remembered she was the one who messed up and then got it back.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful life skill. And if the number of times I say to people, that was there a time when it didn't go quite right, but you came through it? And they say, yeah. And that was great. It was even better than if I hadn't messed up. Yeah. Okay. And that's because you kept your composure. You had some way of saying the pressure isn't so much. And we all know people and moments where we didn't carry on. I literally helped someone with a presentation where she literally had to be led off and sat down, and somebody else had to do her slides. So we talked forever and just got talking more and more, and eventually got out of it. But that was a scarring moment for her. If only she could have said, I need a glass of water, I'll carry on. But that requires a certain degree of being able to cope with the pressure. Oh, this is a moment. It's not terminal. Right. All I need to do is gather my thoughts, breathe, smile, acknowledge it. And actually saying, I don't know what to do next is possibly quite the best answer of all.
Yeah.
That you could say within 10 days time, or even 10 hours or 10 years, it'll be okay. And I'll look back at it. But right now I'm being bossed by my nervous system. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're doing. It's funny you should say that, because we've got a whole initiative in schools, which is absolutely about helping young people own their nervous system.
That's brilliant, because to find a way to say, this is a stressful situation, I've got something to go to, it'll be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we all need. That's what we all need.
How much deliberate attention we pay to preparing ourselves is a key theme in this conversation. 2, as Neil says, have something to go to. But I want to hover over this idea of owning those moments when you don't know, showing when you've messed up, and that moment of human connection, empathy, and deeper understanding that it can breed. The acknowledgement that all of us can fall over sometimes. Neil calls it the truth and authenticity of that real moment of theatre. If we expand this point to other areas of our lives, particularly in leadership, can it be equally powerful? That's the question I keep asking as I listen to Neil. In pressure moments, sometimes sharing with honesty the truth of what's happening for you can be incredibly powerful, and it can be high risk. I've actually witnessed both. I think it's about credibility and trust. Neil is a credible expert, so for others it's powerful to see someone of his skill acknowledging something that didn't work and then finding his way back in. That's the key, finding your way back in. When we witness this in others, we respect it. It invites us to be gentle on ourselves and to believe that we too can find our way back. Oh look, there's someone I really respect and they sometimes mess up and they find their way back and they're fine. Thank goodness. That opens up my range. Here is something I want to leave with you when you find yourself messing up in a performance moment. Turn any self-judgment in that moment into wonder or curiosity. What if I just keep strumming and tell everyone I've forgotten my words? What if I call a break for 2 minutes? What if I just say out loud what's going through my head right now? How is this messy moment for me helping others? Own your mess up. Redirect your attention and recover. When you mess up, turn judgment into wonder.
Fabulous. So this segues nicely into my final 2 questions, Neil, which is, if you were, from your experience and your background and everything that you've learned in your fabulous career, to pass forward 2 things to anyone listening to this podcast who would like to be better in relationship to pressure, what would you offer?
Well, probably an obvious one, which is notice when pressure is coming, headed off at the pass, and when you have what will be a pressurized situation, make amends beforehand. Get in the zone. I think they used to call it prepare for success in childhood, parental things. Prepare for success. Get there early, whatever that means. If you see a pressurized situation coming up, prepare. Now, of course, I'm the improv guy, but actually, as you've heard, I do prepare. Prepare as much as you can. So there's certain things you can prepare. So I offer people things like, listen to your favorite music on the way there. Wear your favorite socks, pants, shirt. Get somebody whom you trust and love to help you with the rehearsal. And by rehearsal, it maybe just have a conversation about the stress that's coming up. So my main thing, and I'm covering a lot of ground here, prepare. Yep. Know when it's coming up. So one is when it's come up and you're not expecting, have something to go to, which may be breathing. And the things I offer are breathing. Mm-hmm. When I have got not much time with somebody, I'll say, presentation happening tomorrow. Remember to pause, breathe, and smile. And those would be my main things. In the moment, pause, breathe, smile, slow down. We can offer them things. I don't know if you ever do the anchor with NLP. Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Mm-hmm. Just in your mind, just picture a great moment, go away from where you are, and you literally go, I want to be in the right state. So I'm going to remember a great day in my life. And I go, squeeze my fingers together like that. So the anchor is a great help. And I broaden that. Any anchor could be helpful. So that means having something about you that helps you relax. And that may just be simply listening to the music, wearing something makes you feel good. But so often people don't have anything. They just say, I'm scared and I'm about to go on. And I turn up with 5 minutes to go and I'm on stage, for example.
Yep. High risk.
I say, no, high risk.
High risk.
And no actor would do that.
No
actor. So follow what an actor would do, which is they rehearse, they learn their lines, they wear the costume, even in the rehearsal room.
Yeah.
They certainly wear the costume on the tech rehearsal. So, and this is what is amazing to a lot of people, is every play you see, they've spent a day walking in and out of the door, pouring that glass of water. So just try and get to the 2 things, which is have something that you can go to when you feel pressure in the moment. But when a pressurized thing is coming up, do as much prep as you possibly can. For example, get to the conference at 7 a.m., speak to the organizer saying, can I just run my lines or slides when nobody's in the room? And even better, have somebody just at the back go, yes, I can hear you. That's fab. A colleague, whoever. So that's the 2 things, is notice when it's coming and have something at the ready. Yeah. But ultimately hope that you don't need to do that because you've got so much prep beforehand that the pressure is part of the flow. You can see it's coming, you go into it, and you've got a nice thing at the other end coming out. So I always say to people presenting, make sure afterwards you've got something as a treat, cup of coffee, a walk, glass of champagne, a bath, or silence. I remember seeing Billy Connolly being filmed. And after a show, you can imagine 2 hours of Billy Connolly, such energy and humour. He says, I like to have a nice cup of tea in silence with my manager in the dressing room. They just sit there, have a cup of tea. He's with somebody, but they don't say anything.
I love that phrase, see pressure as part of the flow. And I think that's a wonderful way to finish this conversation. Thank you so much, Neil, for your time.
Thank you for having me. I've learned a lot about what I think or hadn't even realised.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny. That's actually one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get at the end of it is they go, God, I never thought I could talk about pressure for 1 hour. And I've really constructed a few important things that for myself. So I'm glad about that.
Thank you very much. I hope the bill will be in the post.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and let us know what you found useful or what you'd like to know more about. And don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for our fortnightly Pressure Points newsletter, where I summarise key points from each conversation, you can find a link at saramilnerowe.com. If you're interested in any of the practices mentioned, check out my book, The Shed Method. Alternatively, you can find us at Coaching Impact or me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Better Under Pressure was produced by the fab team at Smart Cookie Media. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.